What if I told you that your doctor looked you in the eye, told you the complete truth, and that truth is the reason you're still in pain today, not because they lied, not because they made a mistake, but because truth, without context, can be just as dangerous as a misdiagnosis. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share might completely change how you understand your pain. Hey, welcome back, or if you're new here, welcome. I'm really glad you found this video, especially if you're someone who's been told you have degenerative disc disease, stenosis, disc bulges, or any other scary sounding diagnosis after an MRI, because today we need to talk about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention in the medical world. The way we talk about imaging findings, and how that language can literally rewire your nervous system and make your pain worse. This isn't fringe science, this is backed by solid research, and by the end of this video, you're going to understand something about pain that most people, including many doctors, were never taught. Let's get into it. I want to start with a story. Let's call her Maria. Maria walked into her doctor's office one day with back pain. Now, it wasn't catastrophic. It was manageable, intermittent, annoying, sure. But she was functioning. She was working, she was gardening, she was going to yoga classes, she was living her life. She walked out of that appointment believing her spine was falling apart. So, what happened? What changed between walking in and walking out? Not her tissue, not her spine, not even her pain level. What changed was her interpretation of what was happening in her body. The MRI had shown what MRIs very commonly show in people Maria's age: disc height loss, some facet joint changes, mild narrowing of the spinal canal. The radiologist, trained to find and report pathology, described these findings using the clinical language of pathology: degenerative disc disease, stenosis, moderate canal narrowing. Her doctor, well-meaning and concerned, warned Maria to be careful, told her to avoid heavy lifting, suggested she reconsider her activities. Maria, being a completely reasonable person, took that advice seriously. She stopped gardening, too much bending. She quit her yoga class, too risky. She started moving like someone whose spine might shatter at any moment. And here's where it gets heartbreaking. Within 6 weeks, Maria went from someone with manageable, intermittent pain to someone experiencing constant, disabling suffering. Now, did her disc degenerate further in those 6 weeks? No. What happened was her nervous system learned a brand new story. And that story was, you are fragile, your body is breaking down, movement is dangerous. And once your nervous system learns that story, it starts acting like it's true. Here's the part that should be told to every single patient who gets an MRI result. In 2015, researchers published a landmark systematic review in the American Journal of Neuroradiology. They looked at MRI findings in over 3,100 people. And here's the critical part: people who had zero back pain, completely asymptomatic individuals. The results were stunning. 80% of people over 50 had disc height loss, what gets called degeneration. 60% had disc bulges, 50% had annular tears, and 30% had what would be reported as moderate stenosis. Let that sink in for a second. 30% of pain-free, fully functional people walking around living their normal lives would get an MRI report describing moderate stenosis. The same finding that sent Maria into a spiral of fear and disability. These weren't sick people. These weren't patients. These were regular people, working, exercising, gardening, doing yoga, with imaging findings identical to Maria's concerning results. The research is clear. The correlation between what shows up on an MRI and the presence or severity of pain is weak at best. So here's the question we have to ask. If these findings are this common in people with no pain at all, why do we still frame them as disease? Why do we use language that installs fear into people who are still functional? Let's talk about the actual words used to describe Maria's imaging results, because words are not neutral, words carry weight. Degenerative. That word sounds progressive, irreversible, like something is in decline, and can't be stopped. Disease. That word signals pathology, something that needs treatment, something that is wrong with you. Stenosis. It's a technical term, and technical terms sound threatening precisely because most people don't fully understand them. Moderate. This one is sneaky. It implies things have already advanced to a mid-stage, like you're partway down a bad road. Each of these words shapes how your brain predicts what's happening in your body. And here's something really important to understand about pain. Pain is not simply a signal from damaged tissue. Pain is a prediction. It's your nervous system's best guess about how much threat your body is under. And predictions are shaped by story. When Maria's story shifted from, I have some back pain, to, my spine is degenerating, I have a disease, I need to protect myself, her nervous system didn't start getting less input from her back. It started amplifying the input it was already getting because now, the story said, this is dangerous. More protection leads to more threat perception. More threat perception leads to more pain. And more pain reinforces the story that something is terribly wrong. This is the cycle. This is what I mean when I say the truth poisoned her. Now, I want to be really clear about something. I am not here to villainize doctors or radiologists. Maria's doctor wasn't trying to harm her. The radiologist wasn't being cruel. Nobody in this story had bad intentions. The system is not malicious, but the system has serious filters. Research gets published, good rigorous research like that 2015 study, showing that imaging findings don't reliably correlate with pain, but that research lives in academic journals. By the time it filters down to practicing clinicians, it's diluted. By the time it reaches radiologists trained specifically to identify pathology, it's often ignored entirely because their job is to report what they see, not to contextualize it for a patient's well-being. And by the time it reaches patients, it's completely lost. What reaches patients instead is catastrophic language, structural explanations, fear, and in chronic pain, fear causes more disability than tissue damage ever could. That's not an opinion. That's what the research shows. So, what would it have looked like if Maria had gotten the full truth, the truth with context? Instead of, your MRI shows degenerative disc disease, be careful, avoid heavy lifting. Imagine if her doctor had said, your MRI shows changes that we see in the majority of people your age. These are incredibly common findings. In fact, we see the same results in people who have absolutely no pain. Your pain is real, and I take it seriously. But it doesn't mean your spine is fragile or that movement will hurt you. Let's talk about how pain actually works. Maria's story might have been completely different. And here's the beautiful part. Maria eventually did get that education. Not from her doctor initially, but from a physical therapist who took the time to explain how pain actually works, who put her imaging findings in proper context, who taught her that her nervous system had learned to over-predict threat, and that it could learn to recalibrate. Within months, Maria was back to gardening, back to yoga, back to her life. Her imaging didn't change. Her predictions changed. So, what does the research actually show helps people in Maria's situation? Patients who are given this kind of understanding do measurably better. Number one, understanding that imaging findings are incredibly common in people who have no pain at all. Number two, understanding that pain does not equal tissue damage. These are not the same thing. Number three, understanding that your body is resilient, not fragile. It is built to move. And number four, understanding that movement is medicine, not a threat to be avoided. These patients recover better, they return to function faster, they experience less long-term disability, not because their tissue is different, because their predictions are different. The poisoned well can absolutely be cleaned, but it requires better communication. It requires context alongside findings. It requires the language of aging rather than disease. And it requires pain education that actually reflects what the science tells us. Here's what I want you to take away from this video. If you've been told you have degenerative disc disease, stenosis, disc bulges, or any other finding on an MRI, I want you to hear this clearly. Those words are not your destiny. Those findings may have nothing to do with why you're in pain, and the fear that those words create, that fear may be doing more damage than anything showing up on that scan. You are not fragile, your body is not falling apart, and movement, the right movement, done progressively and thoughtfully, is almost certainly not your enemy. Somewhere right now, there's another Maria walking into a doctor's office, and she's about to hear language that could send her down the same path. The more we understand how pain actually works, the more we can change that story, for ourselves and for the people we love. If this video made you think differently about your pain or about someone you know who's struggling, please hit that like button. It genuinely helps this information reach more people who need it. And if you're new here, subscribe, because we go deep on pain science and the stuff that actually moves the needle when it comes to recovery. No fluff, no fear-mongering, just the real research explained in plain language. I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever been given an MRI result that left you more scared than when you walked in? What did that experience do to how you moved, how you lived? Drop it below. Your story might help someone else feel less alone. I'll see you in the next one.